Okay guys, welcome to this tutorial about long lines. How to handle them, when to use them, what type to use, all that kind of fun stuff, specifically in relation to small dogs, okay? Right then, first things first, the type of long line that you go for. Now, you've got a small terrier, I mean, one or two of you will have large terriers, but for the most part, those of you on small terriers, you want a nice lightweight line, okay? Because you want the dog to eventually build up to the stage where they're just dragging it along, okay? And if it's really thick and heavy, that's going to act like an anchor and it's going to slow them down. You also want it to be as much, less there as possible, okay? So that when you do take it off, it's less of a transition for the dog. So my personal, the two types of line that I like and that I use is this type. Okay, these are like a rubber gripped line. These are great if you in really slippery conditions. They're also quite lightweight and they don't pick up water too much because of the rubber. Okay, so that's my first choice, but they are less easy to clean and less easy to keep nice. This is my really nice tracking one, so it's nice and clean. And then the other type is this plastic rubberized type. Okay, it's called Biothane, but that's the brand name, but doesn't always have that. And if you can get it in this thin version, okay, so it's nice and thin, it's lightweight. Usually go for the most part for a bright colour if it's a training line that the dog's going to drag, because then I can see it nice and easily. I know that one's black, but that's because it's my tracking line. So this is a nice bright colour that I can always see when I'm out and about, so that if the dog is dragging it, I can see it. Okay, so that's my option. And again, you want some sort of decent clip on the end of it. Again, I tend to go for smaller, lighter weight stuff when I'm talking smaller, lighter weight dogs. Because when I take this line off, eventually I want the transition to be as kind of seamless as possible. Okay, and the heavier the kit, the more the dog's going to notice that it's not there, right? Or notice that it's there, depending on which way around you want to think about it. So that's it. That's your choices of long line. Okay, the main thing is don't go for a standard fabric one if you can get away with it, because they're rubbish on your hands. They pick up all the mud. They get really heavy when they get wet. Just avoid those types if possible. Okay, handling your long line. Okay, so I've got you in the position of the dog there, and I'm away here as the handler, and I am going to have my line so that the amount of line between me and the dog is short but slack. Okay, that's the first thing I want to maintain. So the first trap to avoid is this trap, and it's the one that most people will do when they've got a long line, because it's a bit of an arse of a thing to learn how to do, and that is they'll just simply hold the end like this and let the rest of it drop and slack and drop on the ground, okay? Now what this causes is two things. One, if the dog decides to take off after something, they've got 10 metres or 15 metres or however long your line is, worth of slack to run at, okay? So they're going to run. By the time they've hit the end of 10 metres, they're at full speed. Then they're going to smash into the end of that line. They're going to stop severely, and it's not good for them physically. It's not great for training, and it's also not that safe. Okay, in terms of the fact that really your dog's got too much opportunity to fly off. Okay, so what we want to do is maintain a slack. So there wants to be some slack in it, so that you're not putting pressure on the dog all the time, but short line, and that means paying the line in and out as you go along. Okay, now there are two ways to do it, and the way I like to do it or prefer to do it, especially when I'm out somewhere nice and rural or where there's no people around or anything like that, is I'll actually just leave the slack of the line dragging. Okay, you can hold the line in whichever hand you're comfortable working in, and I'm just going to loosely hold that line. I'm not gripping onto it too tightly or anything, and as the dog moves away, I'll just simply let the line out, and as the dog comes towards me, or as I go towards the dog for whatever reason, I'll just use my two hands and work down the line like that. Okay, so that I'm always maintaining this kind of like short but slack line. Okay, and the same goes for any lead handling really, short but slack. Yes, the dog's got nowhere to go, and if they do take off at this point, boff, they've stopped within 2 centimetres. Okay, so that's the first way to do it. The other way to do it, and probably the more common way to do it, if people tend to not want to leave the end of this dragging along, is that they'll loop it up as they go along. It's a perfectly legitimate way to handle a line. I just think it's more of a pain in the arse, and it gives me extra things to think about and extra things to do. The times and the places where I would do this, where I would have the end of my line looped up like this as opposed to dragging along the ground, are as if I'm likely to trip somebody up, or I'm on some particular piece of horrible ground that I don't want the end of the line to drag through. But with these plastic lines, they're just wipe clean and they dry off on their own at the end of the day. So really there's no need to stress about what it's dragging through too much, as long as it's not, anything really foul. So I actually find holding this up and doing this all the time, so as I'm going into the dog, I'm kind of paying it in like that, actually a bit of a pain in the backside. And also you often find as you're doing that, you're putting tension on the line as you're going in and out. Okay, so like as you're doing that, there's like tension going on the line there, and you're pulling in, tension going on the line there, and you're pulling in. And you really want your line to be like a seatbelt, right? You don't want the dog to feel it particularly. So I'd much rather do that. You can see it on a big scale. Like if you're the dog all the way over there, like I can be right out at the end of this line over here. And this is short but slack. Okay, so it's still short in the sense the distance between me and the dog. If the dog takes off is short, there's still slack in it, and I can just work up and down it like this. Right, the end of that line is moving around a lot less. It's a lot less noticeable to the dog, and I'm not, like having to loop things up and then unloop them and make things difficult for myself. Yeah, I'm just working up and down that line. So that is the two different ways I would handle a long line, and I personally prefer to leave it out dragging. I think it's a lot easier. The other thing to consider is just, like your hands. If you need to do some grippy gloves to help you grip the line, it's the middle of winter, you're going to want gloves on, and just where you are in terms of conditions with that. But other than that, that's it. Now, it's a bit of an arse of a skill to learn, and it's something that you can practice paying in and out. I would do like what I've done here. I would just attach the line to a gate, which is what I've done here, and practice paying it in and out a bit before you go out with your dog so that you feel nice and comfortable with it. And also, it's not like you're not like out causing, like getting it all tangled up and everything when you're out and about. Okay, so have a bit of a practice with it before you go out. Getting this right will accelerate your training loads. Okay, rather than just holding on to the end of the line, which you see quite often, and dogs just pinging around all over the place, ping, 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 getting wound up, hitting the end of the line, being frustrated, versus that kind of like gentle paying it in and out. Okay, so the next thing I want to mention before I show you a little video of a dog on a line is a cue that I use called, a cue that I teach a dog that's on a long line, which is to let them know they're getting to the end of the line. Okay, because I want the dog essentially, they're not stupid, right? They know they're on long lines. You're trying to minimise it as much as possible so the transition between the line and off lead is the smallest and less kind of like obvious as possible. But they're not idiots, right? They know when you put them on a line. You'll see it. I'll put my obviously off lead most of the time on a line in the video in a minute that you'll see, and you can tell he knows he's on a line, right? He slows down, he stops, he doesn't go towards the end of it because he's used to it. But you're also trying to use your line to build that behaviour, to build the fact that the dog is staying engaged with you, staying with you, stops when you stop, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and that's like part of what this is, and obviously the prevention of the behaviour that you don't have control over at the minute, which is I'm chasing off after things and going off hunting for 3 hours, as terriers tend to do. So I add what I call a steady cue. Now you can use any word you like for this. I use steady just because I rode horses for years and it kind of makes sense to me, but you can use any word that you want to. And it's a cue that's going to be super useful when you also have them off the line, and I still use it all the time. Okay, and it's just when I want the dog to slow down a little bit and stay engaged with me. So what happens is when the dog is getting towards the end of the line, okay, however long that line is initially, whether you're comfortable with your dog on 5 or 10 metres or whatever. So let's say that this is it. This is the end of the line for now. I'm going to let the dog know by calling out a cue. Okay. Now the important part is the timing. I'm calling out that cue before they hit the end of the line, right? If they've already hit the end of the line, then the cue or the communication that you've given them first is the pull on the line, right? Now remember that you want your dog to be off the line at some point. That's the aim of this, okay? And if you are using your line as the cue, when you take that line away, the cue or the control or the communication with your dog is gone. And dogs are physical communicators for the most part. They'll communicate through body language and touch and pressure over and above vocal communication. We're vocal. We listen to what people say first. Dogs don't. Okay? So what you need to do is make sure that the vocal cue that you give them comes before the physical cue so that it takes precedence. Okay? So the dog's getting towards the end of the line. The slack's about to disappear. Okay? I'm going to call out my cue, which means steady. I'm going to go steady, and then I'm going to gently break the dog. Okay? As in, like, slow them down, not break them in half. Okay, so I'm going to gently go steady, gentle break. Okay, that might be that I'm just gently gripping the line just to slow them down a little bit. I might be putting a tiny little bit of pressure on just to let them know that before, when they hear that word, the next thing that's going to happen is they're going to have to stop, right? Because they're going to hit the end of that line. Now, we're trying to make it as calm and a chilled in a process as possible, right? I understand some of you at the moment will put your dog on a long line because they haven't had any freedom in ages. The terrier and the little and the tiny, and they're zipping around all over the place like a lunatic, and you're just like stood there going, ah, with a Tasmanian devil on the end of the line, okay? If that's the case, I suggest you work at this kind of distance first, whether you have a 10-metre line or whatever long you want, right? You keep them at about 5-ish metres for now, and you work that cue. And it might mean that it looks messy and crappy, all right? And that's fine. And you're literally going, steady, 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 break, steady, break quite a lot, okay? And you're teaching them that this is what this means. They don't have to come back to you. They don't have to do anything about it. They just have to understand that that steady cue means please slow down, because I'm asking you, or you're about to be stopped, okay? If you don't do it, you'll hit the end of that line. Most dogs don't want to hit the end of the line. It's frustrating for them. It's annoying. They don't want to, okay? So once they get the hang of it, it makes your communication on and off the line a lot easier. And then when you take that line off, you've still got that cue available. I use it every day with my dogs. Dogs, steady, okay? It just means hang there, okay? You don't have to come back to me. You don't have to do anything. You can continue to engage with the environment. Just hang there, right? I just use it to, particularly with Elvis, because he's so forward and he's always wanting to be away, just to calm him down and bring him back to me a little bit, right? So that's your steady cue, okay? So now I'm going to show you a little video. It's Elvis walking through a bit of woods. He's on a line, and you can see that steady cue in action. Right, okay, folks, to give you a bit of an idea about how to handle a dog on a long line in an exciting place, I've put Elvis on the long line as I go through this wood, because he loves this section of wood and he always wants to be like miles ahead of me, and he's desperate to get on, and there's chase things in this wood. So hopefully you'll see a little bit of what it's like to handle or apply some of those long line skills with a dog who is forward thinking and going forward, which is a situation you're going to be in now if they're not off lead yet, okay? And this is going to frustrate him a little bit because he's not going to want to be on a long line. He's used to being off lead, okay? So hopefully you'll see some comparisons, right? So first way that I would personally handle my line through like a section like this, where I've got no need to have it in my, or to coil up the other end, is I would just leave it running loose, okay? So you're just going to see that that's how I'm going to run it. I'm going to have it, I'm just going to hold the line in one hand, and I'm going to let it run backwards and forwards through my hand as it can pay it out and in as he goes, okay? And work up and down that line rather than have like loops like that. And we'll see me apply that steady cue that I talked about, okay? So as he gets towards the end of the line, he wants to go, I'll put some gentle pressure on that line. I'll say my cue, which for me is steady, but you can have any word you like. And then he will know that he's about to hit the end of the line and hopefully stop, okay? As I said, it will translate then into when he's off lead, okay? And it does translate into he's off lead. It's still the cue that I use if I want them to slow down and steady, okay? So, okay, here we go. So he's a bit hesitant because he's like, why am I on a line? He will relax in a minute and get excited and go forward, hopefully. And perhaps you can see basically I've got the line in my hand like that. I've got the rest of it paying out behind me. Go on, dogs, let's go. Go on, go sniff. Just going to send him out to go. That's it. There he is. As you can see, what I'm doing is I'm just keeping the distance between me, him and the line like at its shortest, right? So my hand's there rather than holding the end of the line. And he's got this whole 10 metres to work on. He can move out if he wants to. And then what I would do is I'd just use my right hand like that. So that as I come into him, the distance between him and me, or the line, is the same. So if he decides to take off, there's no like, he hasn't got 10 metres worth of line for me holding the end. He's only going to go like half a metre, not even that probably, and then stop, okay? Which means A, he's not going to injure himself. B, I know where he is at all times. Again, so I'm just bringing this line back in now, okay? So I've got my phone, so it's difficult to show you, but there we go. I'm keeping the distance between me, him and the line, or keeping the line slack but short, right? If that makes sense. Now he's coming to the end of the line here. There's the end of the line. So I'm going to steady, gentle pressure, break him, catch up with him a little bit, bring the line in, and off we go again, okay? Now he moves when I move because that's just the relationship me and this dog have. But if you need to, you can release, you can release him out, release your dog out again, that's fine. Okay, he's got the freedom to go and do what he wants there. A bit of a pee. Steady. That's it, so he felt the line, stop there, good lad. Okay, so what you don't want to happen is too much of this, okay? So because I've got like one hand busy holding the phone, this has happened a bit, all right? So now essentially if he goes, there's that bit of slack. What you want is to have this slack pulled in like this, so that again the distance between me and the dog is me, and the rest of it's hanging out the back, okay? So that if he goes, he stops instantly. Okay, so if he goes off to chase something, so again, you know, like prevents injury to him, prevents injury to me and my shoulders, and also just means that I'm stopping him straight away, which is much better from a training point of view. But there's still slack in this line now, so he's as close to free as he can be while being on a line, basically. And again, don't let this loop stuff happen. I'll show you what we don't want. What we actually want is to bring it in, work the way up the line, like this. Okay. Now I'm close to him and the line's there. That's it, based on where he is. He just goes in and out from me at his own pace, and I'm the one that's like working the line, if you like, because I'm trying to train him at this stage to be as close to being off lead as possible, okay? Rather than using the line to stop him all the time, that's not the point. Because then when the line's not there, it's not going to work, right? So you've got to imagine I'm just using this line like a safety belt. So, working up and down it. As you can see, he's really excited about wanting to go off and chase things in the woods. He knows he's on a line though, he's not stupid. He's line trained, if that makes sense. So, there he goes. But you can see how, like the way that my two behave off lines, it is very much because they were trained on lines, okay? So like, when they get a bit far ahead of me, they stop and wait for me to catch up, because that's what a line's taught them to do. Because I'm not keeping pressure on this line all the time, and I'm not actually using the line to stop him, I'm just playing it in and out like a safety belt. Okay, I'm getting to the end now, so I'm going to let him know, steady. Right, he's stopping. So he didn't actually have to use the line there, because that's the cue he's trained for. And he moved forward when I moved forward. He's going to make it difficult for me now by going underneath there. So when things like this happen, right, so he's gone underneath that obstacle, which is a bit of a pain in the backside. All I'm going to do is drop the line, go over, and then I can pick it back up again at that spot. Okay, and then I'm back in the nice place with the line again. So really, you see, I'm not really using the line to interfere with him at any point, really. If I recall him now, he'll come, like 99% chance that he will. That's it. He wants to stop, let him stop, go on, good lad. But if he didn't, if I recalled him and he didn't, then that's when I would then use my line as a backup. Okay, so I come in here. Yeah. Good lad. Okay, so I didn't need my line as a backup because the recall's good, but if I had done at that point, then I could have used my line as a backup. Okay. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to having the line dragging, okay? So now I'm hands-free, I'm not touching the line at all. But what I'm doing is walking next to the line and staying in contact with it, okay? So if at any point I need to pick this line up or stop him, I can either very, very quickly put a foot on it, poof, and stop him, right? Which I would only do in an emergency situation. But again, the reason why I need to be right near the line is that if I do that, I don't want him charging to the end of the line. Okay, I don't want him, I'm going to put my foot on it, have him charge to the end of the line and then break his neck or, you know, whatever. So so I'm keeping in touch with that line, okay? So once you get more confident, you get to this stage, you can let the line go out a little bit, and this is all down to your mobility and your fitness and how you feel about it, okay? But within reason, and see, I'm still close to that line. The more confident you get in your dog, the more you can allow that line to just drag along. But if I needed to, it's there, okay? And ideally, I don't touch it. Okay, when I'm saying from long line training a dog, if I haven't had to pick that line up for 2 weeks, then that dog can have that line off. Okay? So they just dragged it around like this. Dog's here. They've responded to their recalls when asked. Nice. I didn't have to use the line to back it up. Good dog's going. That's it. Oops. And I can now behave pretty much, oops, like I would do if they were off the lead completely, but just with this line on as a backup, right? Once you're at that stage. The other question I asked is what happens when that happens, okay? Because little dogs, the lines get trapped around their legs quite often. Is I don't actually do anything about it unless it's actually wrapped around their legs to the point where it's going to cause an injury. I just leave it, okay? The dog will sort it out for themselves, and the more competent the dog gets at it, the better. The less stressed they are about it, the better. What I see people quite often is like grabbing hold of the dog and trying to lift up their legs and make a big fuss out of it. Don't, okay? Just let it be. Unless it's going to cause an injury, it's fine. So you can see now he's going off a little bit more now. He's aware that I'm not got hold of that line. And now I'm deciding, you know, like, am I cool with him being that far away? It's no, there we go. He's moving on. But if he'd have decided to take off into that wood there, if he'd have got on to chase something, then I was close enough to that line where I could have stopped it before he'd gone away, okay? So that's really the point of your line. Just stay in touch with it. And if and when you feel like your dog isn't responding to that line, or isn't responding to you, then you've got it there as a backup. All right, last thing. Hope you enjoyed that little seeing it in practical action a little bit there. The last point I just want to cover is what you attach your long line to and keeping it neat and tidy and not hitting yourself in the face with it. So you'll see in the video it's attached onto a collar with Elvis. A lot of terriers are harness averse. They don't like wearing harnesses. It doesn't matter how much harness conditioning you do with them. I don't care how many people say to me, you just haven't conditioned your harness properly. I have conditioned my harness properly. I've never abused my dogs with a harness. They were introduced to them correctly as puppies. They still don't like wearing them, right? And if I don't have to make a terrier that doesn't like wearing a harness wear a harness, I won't make them do it, okay? They'll wear it, I'll put one on them and they'll get on with it, but they don't like it, and I know they don't like it. So if I've got a relatively chill, calm dog, or one that's not going to hit the end of the line, or I'm further on in my long line training, I'm comfortable with using a collar to clip that long line onto. I don't want to clip a long line onto a dog or I don't want to clip onto a collar if a dog's an absolute lunatic, okay, and they're bursting around all over the place. But in which case, I probably wouldn't have them on a 10 metre line anyway. They'd be on a shorter line and I'd be working on their engagement a little bit more before I gave them this, like too much freedom, if they were that nuts, okay? But if your dog is comfortable wearing a harness and they're happy wearing a harness, then the gold standard is to clip your line onto a harness, okay? It's safer, it's more comfortable. The other thing it does is it will keep it out of the legs a little bit, okay? So like you'll see me talk about it, you'll have seen me talk about it in that video. I don't tend to stress when it goes through the legs, don't make a big thing of it. I'm not stopping picking the legs up, trying to get the legs out of it, because it just makes a hassle out of stuff that doesn't need to be a hassle. Having it clipped to a harness prevents that a little bit, because obviously it's coming from the top, not the bottom too. That's cool. So harness, collar, whichever suits you, just make sure it's safe, suitable, well maintained, all those fun things. So in terms of your dealing with your line, like tidying it and keeping it so it's not like a massive tangle mess every time you pull it out, the easiest way I've found to do it, and most efficient way, is to do it like a climbing rope, okay? So this is what the climbers will do. Take hold of the clip end and just wrap it around your elbow, back through your hand, and just loop it up like that. Okay. Once you've got it all looped up like that, I'm going to just pinch it together at the top, take the clip end, okay, pull a little bit of it through, wrap it round a couple of times, and then punch it back through the hole there. Okay, there you go. And then that will now hang up, clipped onto something nicely, and stay nice and clean and tidy, so that next time you come to it, you're not like trying to untangle the whole thing every time you get your dog out. So that's the basics of long line handling. Your steady cue, which is the key to a lot of it, I think, and it will help you. Loads of people are put off long lines because they're difficult to deal with and they're a bit of a pain in the arse and they don't want to use them. If you do it right and you get the practice, it's honestly the most liberating thing, especially for a terrier, who can then get a bit more freedom, get a bit more chill, get a bit more relaxed. It's better for you, it's better for them, and it is the bridge to giving you a dog that can be off the lead. So go, learn long lines, have fun.